up until that point, I really didn't know what recovery looked like until I walked into my first Phoenix event. I was very familiar with active addiction, but I really didn't know where to find recovering individuals or what life would look like. I was pretty sure things were going to be boring. I didn't know what I was going to do with myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that when I walked into that first event, I was like, I could do this. I could be a rock climber. I could get into the outdoors. There's a network of people that I could hang out with that are not trying to drink and use. So that was kind of the first time that I thought that maybe this would be a sustainable lifestyle for me.
Yeah.
Was when I walked in my first Phoenix event.
Stories are powerful.
Welcome to the Rise, Recover, Live podcast, brought to you by The Phoenix. This is a space where people impacted by substance use can come to share their story of strength and resilience, get open and honest, and inspire hope and build community through shared experience.
We'll be talking to people in our community on their own recovery journey and shine a light on the topic of recovery in all its forms. Maybe you'll hear some of your story in theirs.
Let's show the world that together we rise, recover, and live.
Yo, Bryce the Third here, popping on before we get this episode started to let you know of some cool stuff we got coming up. August 10th, from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we are going to be doing our very first live podcast virtually. This will be a program that you can register for right now in the Phoenix app. You'll get the notification before the event starts, and then you just pop onto the Phoenix app and join. We're going to be having a live conversation guided by our special guest, you. We'll be building community, answering questions, and sharing stories in real time. And I cannot tell you how excited I am about it. So open up your Phoenix app right now, go register for that program, and don't just register, show your butt up. We usually crack like 500 downloads an episode, and I really want to see each and every one of you. Bring your mama, tell your cousin, bring the kids, put them on your lap, and let's rise and recover live. Who I've been wanting to say that? All right, let me let you go so you can enjoy today's episode. Welcome everybody to another episode of the Rise, Recover, Live podcast. We are your hosts, Bryce the Third, he, him pronouns.
And Liz McKean, she, her pronouns.
What's up, Liz? How's your energy?
My energy. Okay, so last time we recorded, you had a conversation with one of our guests about that question about like your honest answers. And it made me think, I was like, man, I really do the thing where you ask me, I'm like, what is the most positive thing I can say to answer? So I've been thinking about it. And I've come to the conclusion that I have been completely honest, because there is something about this part of the work that we do and about coming on to talk to you and about knowing that we're about to hear somebody's recovery story that quite genuinely anything else that's going on that might have my energy a little bit murky gets really brightened. Like when I say things like I'm feeling bright and sunny and I have a lot of energy and I'm so happy to be here with you, like that is actually that is sincere in this moment. That is exactly how I feel, which is part of like my, great efforts to be in the moment. So thank you for being part of these moments that I feel so good.
That's beautiful. And we will catch you next time on the Rise Recovery. That's it.
40 minutes, bam.
No, that's beautiful. And
Wait.
I think, the fact that we continue to contemplate on how it is that we show up and touching base with ourselves to, make sure that we're being authentic in the ways that we show up. I think that's recovery in action. And I think that's like being the best steward for yourself. So, thank you for sharing that. And
of course. And how's yours? How's your energy today?
My energy was waiting for you to ask me how's my energy. And,
how did you know?
And I'm chilling for real. I'm still a bit contemplative. I don't know. Like I'm in a season of reflection. Really like there's a lot of heart in the things that I'm putting effort and energy into creating because like they really like have like I'm gonna do this and I don't really care about who thinks what about it. And I don't know, there's a shift happening. And so I'm just interested to see what happens, prioritizing more action than talk, even though we host a podcast. And we are
Don't give up on the talk, please.
And we are talking to wonderful members of the community, which, by the way, who do we have with us today, Liz?
We have a person who just emits good energy. We have Todd Jones with us today. Todd Jones is a regional manager at the Phoenix. Super excited to hear his story just in general. The thing that we have in common is we both started as volunteers, came on as full-time staff. And so, I think Phoenix is part of your journey in a different way when you have that I don't know, just like that starting point that isn't like this is a job from the beginning. So I'm really thrilled to introduce Todd Jones. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. I'm Todd Jones, he, him pronouns.
So glad that you're
Thanks
here.
for having me on.
Yeah, Todd. So how's your energy today?
My energy is, I'm trying to bring it down a notch. It's been an intense week. We just got back from our big Moab trip. So serving a bunch of people out there, which was amazing. So, and just had a really busy week. So just kind of trying.
And what is Moab for like the people who don't, who maybe this is their first touch base with Phoenix in general? Like, what is Moab?
Sure. Moab is a place in Utah. It's an amazing location. It's a mountain biking capital of the world, I think. And we take a group of 200 people in recovery from substance use disorder to celebrate our recovery, do lots of fun activities like rock climbing, yoga, mountain bikes, road bike rides, hiking. And it's a camping trip. And we go for several days and just have a really great time out in the desert.
Nice.
Cool. All of you, I mean, more than just the Colorado Phoenix teams, but I know so many of the Colorado Phoenix teams are such outdoors, experts for lack of a better word. Like you talk about just like climbing, like mountains, rocks, but mountains, and hiking and sleeping in tents and things like that. And I think that's so incredible. And I see how much it changes people who experience it, particularly those of us who've experienced substance use disorder and just never thought we could do anything like that. I proudly choose not to do anything like that, but so glad that it's happening. And just to be out there in the wilderness and have nothing to do but just be with other people who have been on this journey has got to be so wild. Like, I know you've done it a bunch of times. Is it amazing every single time?
Yeah, it's amazing every time. I think this was my 12th trip with the Phoenix out there. And it was just as phenomenal as the first time I went out as a team member. And so being able to give that experience to other folks is just super impactful. So
cool. Bryce, would you do it? Would you go to Moab?
Would I go to Moab? Yeah, I would go to Moab. I think the opportunity hasn't presented itself yet. I'm either booked or like something else is going on, but I would definitely pop out. I know there's a couple of people asking me, was I going out there? It looks beautiful.
Oh my gosh,
my main man, Vince, he was out there and it was a picture of him on the wall, like rock climbing. And I'm like, man, that's like a big day. And I think the first time Liz and I met was in Vegas. And we had a rental and I ended up in the Mojave Desert at one point in time. And like I came back and I just expressed to her that like I like big things that make me feel small in a good way. And even just looking at that photo, it's like the structures, the natural structures out there and like how beautiful they are. Like it has to be like a spiritual experience out there.
Yeah, it's a pretty special place.
Yeah. So Todd, I really, I know that you've told your story a lot. You've been part of the Phoenix for a lot of years. I have not had the privilege of hearing it. So I know you've told it many times, and we've talked about on this podcast how every time we tell our story that comes out a little different. Sometimes we learn something from ourselves, which I think is such a gift. So knowing that that it's not your first rodeo, but excited to hear how it comes out here, would you be so kind to share some of your recovery story and how Phoenix came into that?
Just a little background. So I drank and used for about 15 years. I was kind of a late bloomer by a lot of people's, stories. I didn't start drinking and using until I was about 18. I was really involved with athletics up until that point. And I think that kind of staved off my addiction for a little while. But when I went into it, I went hard and fast. I think I went from, never touching a substance to using methamphetamines within a matter of a couple of weeks. And then just kind of steamrolled from there. During that journey, I would have periods of, getting off of illegal substances and sticking to alcohol and going back to illegal substances, but it never really mattered. It was all the same for me. It was just addiction. And I just knew that once I started drinking and using, it just didn't seem like I knew how not to. I was arrested 7 times in 6 months as a product of my addiction, and 3 of them were felonies. When you get arrested for a felony and get out on bond and get arrested for another felony, bond out on 2 felonies and get arrested for your 3rd, you're in a lot of trouble. And that was my story. So really fortunate. I got diverted into the drug court program in Colorado Springs. And the judge said, hey, there's this new thing in town called the Phoenix. Actually, it was called Phoenix Multisport back then. And they're like, you should go check it out. I had no idea what it was. I didn't know anything about it, but I knew I didn't want to go to jail. I didn't really want to be sober, but I didn't want to go to jail either. So I was like, I'm going to do whatever she says I have to do. And then after this year of intensive, drug court probation, I'll just go back to doing what I know. But for now, here I am. So I went to my first Phoenix event. I walked in, and the instructor was genuinely happy that I was there. And there weren't a lot of people that were genuinely happy to see me. So that was kind of exciting. They taught me everything I needed to know. It was a rock climbing event. They taught me everything I needed to know about putting my harness on. I got to the top of the wall for the first time. And I remember thinking to myself when I got to the top of the wall, I was like, wow, that's the first time I've had a win in a really long time. This feels really, really good. I went home that night and I couldn't sleep. I was just so amped from the energy of being there. And they also invited me back. And that was huge. And I remember laying there in bed that first night after my first event. And I thought, this seems like a pipe dream. And it's kind of silly. But maybe if I kind of, can do the next right thing for myself, I could be like that guy at the Phoenix tonight that kind of shared this experience. But I was like, that just seems a little ridiculous. Let's not get carried away here. And so I really got involved. Just started going to every event I could go. At the time, there was 3 events in Colorado Springs, and I was a regular at every single one of them. Up until that point, I really didn't know what recovery looked like until I walked into my first Phoenix event. I was very familiar with active addiction, but I really didn't know where to find recovering individuals or what life would look like. I was pretty sure things were going to be boring. I didn't know what I was going to do with myself. And I think that when I walked into that first event, I was like, I could do this. I could be a rock climber. I could get into the outdoors. There's a network of people that I could hang out with that are not trying to drink and use. So that was kind of the first time that I thought that maybe this would be a sustainable lifestyle for me.
Yeah.
Was when I walked in my first Phoenix event.
The thing that jumps out, the feeling that you got when you had that first win, getting to the top of the wall. Was it at a wall? Yeah. Mm-hmm. That I relate to that with yoga, and similarly didn't want to be sober, even during the times that I knew I had to. I wanted to be sober at some of the times, but didn't want to. And then I started having those top of the wall moments on the yoga mat where all of a sudden it was, I hesitate to call it a high because it really is it's such a more pure kind of feeling to me, but it was it was what I was looking for in the high, it was the joy. It was that, that just moment of being full of, hope and just a knowing that it was going to be okay, that I never had any other way except for just to numb all the not okay stuff. And that was what got me to first start feeling like maybe I want this. And that was when it really changed everything. Because you really do it's amazing how much your brain just gets hijacked, and you truly cannot imagine a world that could be livable without substances. Cannot imagine it. And until you have that feeling, it's got to be an inside thing that's convincing, inside and outside, because you also were able to see that in somebody else who you wanted to, have what he had. That's really cool. And I think the cool thing about it too, within the Phoenix and then also just in the world, is that there's so many different areas that we all can find that. There is something that can give you that thing that fills whatever need it is that the substance is, faking filling. And now you give that to other people.
Yeah, that's the beauty of it. I think, I think for me, it was just not even knowing where to start, of how to feel different. It had, over the 15 years that I drank and used, it becomes such a part of my life that even though it was incredibly uncomfortable and not what I wanted to be doing anymore, and it cost me, so dearly in my life, it was even, at the point of losing my freedom, over it. It was still just, it's what I knew. I remember meeting the instructor at the Phoenix and talking to him, and we go on hikes together. And so it was just a great time to get to talk. And I remember talking to him and realizing really quickly, he drank and used like I drank and used, and he didn't do that anymore.
Yeah.
And I was just like, and I remember just continuously asking him more and more questions, like, how did you do that? How does this happen for you? What was the moment for you? And like, just really trying to absorb everything, and then finding myself doing that with, other community members of the Phoenix too, because I was just really trying to wrap my head around how to make that shift. Because I was sober at the time, but with great, influence from, the great state of Colorado, having to go do UAs and meeting with probation officers and all that. And I knew that wasn't going to last forever. And if it was going to be a long-term solution, I needed more tools in my toolbox.
Nice little nudge from the judge. Never hurt nobody.
Right.
Did you always have like that? Was it always inherent for you to dig deeper and pick the brains of people in the community? Because I know some people, like, there may be a fear of opening up and asking questions and being inquisitive around like how other people were doing those things. Like, what was the driver for you to be so much of a sponge when you entered into this new environment?
Yeah, it didn't happen at first. I think it happened kind of slowly over time as like I started to value the community that I was in and the life that I was starting to develop. Joining the Phoenix, doing more and more things. We started going camping on the weekends together, and we started doing things. And I started to think to myself, wow, this is pretty awesome. So at first, I think there was some curiosity that drove me to ask some initial questions. But as the weeks and months started to roll by, I saw the community that I had gained in the life that I was starting to develop. And, I hadn't been in a jail cell in a while. That was a pretty big deal. Like, how do I maintain this? And then I started to get really curious about it. And honestly, I'll give him a shout out. Rourke Weaver was my first instructor at an event, and he was amazing. He also asked me a lot of questions, just in a very loving and non-invasive way, and that kind of helped get my wheels turning a little bit,
Yeah. Like you were seen and valued, like you said, like they were excited that you were there and wanted you to come back and then wanted to know more about you. That's a really powerful gift to give to somebody.
Yeah, I remember a really big turning point for me was I was working at a metal finishing factory, and I'd get up really early in the morning and I'd go do that. And I'd usually go home and take a break and take a nap, and then I'd head out to a Phoenix event. And that was kind of my routine. And one time I overslept, and about 4 or 5 community members and the instructors all called me and said, "Hey man, where are you? You're always here. You okay?" And I remember thinking like, wow, this has kind of become a home to me. And that was a really big turning point of like, I was important to him. I was a person. It mattered that I was there.
That's incredible.
When I think about like nudges from the judge, there is the opportunity to be exposed to different resources that may be able to plant seeds in a person to maybe make a lifestyle shift. But not everybody is necessarily motivated nor latches onto that, or that might not be the time for those seeds to blossom. What do you think was different for you in that instant that allowed for you to kind of like lean into this process? And when it came to the conversation around like addiction, was there stigma that existed that you had to overcome to be able to get to that point?
I think the dire consequence I was facing is what kind of opened my mind to being willing to look at this. The first time I got arrested, I got out of jail so quickly that it didn't really even land, the first felony. I didn't even make it past processing, and I bailed out right away. And so I didn't think it even landed that the true situation I was in. And really, the third time I got arrested, I spent some time in jail. And I remember kind of having some time long enough away from drugs numbing me out and alcohol drug numbing me out to really kind of reflect on where I was at and what my situation looked like. And I think that was the first, deep thoughts of like, I think I better do something different, or maybe there's something different out there for me. Mm-hmm. I'm also incredibly grateful for that opportunity, because some people don't take advantage of the opportunity. A lot of people aren't given it, right? Mm-hmm. They're just sent directly to jail. Mm-hmm. or prison, and they aren't really given that opportunity to kind of reconsider what they're working on or not working on. So I think, having a little time and space removed from drugs and alcohol gave me some time to reflect and consider that maybe I need to do something different. I think where stigma really played a role for me was not knowing where to find people in recovery. Sure, I'd heard 12-step, but it wasn't something that I was super excited about at the time. It's something I joined later on as a part of my recovery journey. But at the moment, it wasn't something I was super excited about. And I didn't know anybody else sober. Like I said earlier, it's like I definitely knew what active addiction looked like, but I didn't know what active recovery looked like. And so I think like just having that opportunity to see that, which I think a lot of people aren't loud and proud about their recovery because of the stigma, and then the way that stigma later on played a big role in my life was more around trauma and just owning that. Yeah, I've had some traumatic experiences, definitely had a lot of adverse childhood experiences, and how has that affected me in my life? So I think that's where stigma and just owning those different things about yourself and your journey is pivotal. And I think part of the reason why I wear a sober shirt all the time and I'm really open and about my recovery is rarely do I not talk about my recovery when I meet somebody, is because I just want to make sure that somebody else sees someone in recovery. And if they're struggling, you never know when you meet somebody if they're struggling. For years, I flew under the radar. I was a pretty high functioning for a really long time. I always had jobs and things like that until, towards the end of my addiction where I didn't. And most people didn't know that I had an issue, and they definitely didn't know how serious it was if they didn't know. So,
yeah. One of the things that I think is unique in all of our stories, but not unique in just like the concept of it, is the kind of overwhelm of looking at what recovery could be, when it very rarely, I guess I shouldn't say rarely. For me, it wasn't the case. And I know for most people we've talked to, it's like, I'm going to put down this substance and then life is just okay. Like there's almost always, relationships that need to be mended or maybe can't be. There is sometimes housing situations. There's almost always some kind of financial stuff going on, jobs that all these things. And then so often there's a aspect of, criminal charges, things like that. And then we're given the message, I think, societally, that just stop doing this thing and then life is going to be okay. And sometimes that's even how it comes from the recovery community, just like stop doing this thing and life is going to be great. And it's not the case, and also is the case, because then you can start chipping away at those things. But I think in the beginning, it's like, I no longer have my one coping thing that I reach for when I'm overwhelmed. And also I'm more overwhelmed than I've ever been before. And I know that even at the point that I'm like, I know I want that thing at the end of the tunnel, I, again, just can't imagine how I could possibly overcome all these other things without my coping tool. So I'm just wondering if you had those feelings of overwhelm and what you did.
Yeah, I can definitely relate with that. I had, financial issues. I had job issues. I was, 3 felonies. They're not very hireable when you have 3 felonies pending. I had definitely had all kinds of relationship issues and really didn't know how to relate with the world around me in general. And I think, the very, very first step to that, to solving any of those issues was sobriety, right? Without that, you didn't even have a starting point. So that was like, but it was just that. It was the starting point of the journey, right? I mean, it's a necessity and a joy to maintain, but that's kind of where it all began. I think from that point forward, building relationships in a safe place was really, really important, and kind of learning how to interact with the world. And the Phoenix provided that for me. I did a lot of 12-step to try to, kind of like start addressing some of my issues. And then I've, consistently been a part of, therapy to kind of, go deeper and to work through those things with, some guidance. After this meeting, I will go to my therapy session, and just having those opportunities to continuously grow and look at behaviors that don't serve me, and as well as lots of different opportunities, being part of the drug court program. I eventually completed that. My record's been sealed, so that kind of alleviated a lot of problems. The Phoenix gave me an opportunity to come to work for them while my charges were still were still out there. So I, that really helped with the job situation, and just kind of a lot of those things like kind of slowly happen over time. And I think that's the biggest thing, is if you try try to tackle all of your problems at one time, it is going to be incredibly overwhelming. And it's a journey. I know that's a kind of a cliche term, but it is a journey. It never really ends. It's just a new iteration of the growth opportunities that are in front of you and taking advantage of those.
Yeah, I definitely relate to that. And it's for me too, it's a practice in every day, just kind of reminding myself and allowing other people to remind me that I am worthy of that it's okay to take a step to heal a thing that, makes me feel so ashamed for a long time that I caused this thing to fall apart. It's okay to start to piece that back together. Sometimes it's okay to not piece that back together right now, because right now I just need to not drink today, and that is all I can do today. And the other stuff maybe has to wait, and that is putting myself first when maybe for a long time I felt like I don't deserve to put myself first. But that practice in worthiness, I think, is big for the one day at a time, just to jump on the cliche, bandwagon. And yeah, thank you for saying that all those pieces played a part, and you still kept going, and here you are today, inspiring others.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's learning of the worthiness is, it's more of that stigma, right? It's self stigmatization, if I could say that
Good
word.
Word.
I get to, for me, like that played such a role. Even in the beginning of the story, I was talking to y'all about. I said, I saw that instructor and I thought maybe, just maybe, but I don't know if I intrinsically believed in myself that I could become, a member of the Phoenix as a volunteer or as a staff member, and that I could influence people's lives in a positive way. I know you all interviewed my beautiful wife a while back. It was kind of played a role when I met her. She immediately was like, I want to get married and have kids. And I was like, wow, that sounds terrifying. I've been married before. I'm not a good husband. I know that. And I tried to be a father before, and that didn't work out. I wasn't a good dad to my son. And, in that process, a friend of mine who I'd known for years, she knew me during my active addiction. She knows me now. And, we were talking about the situation. She said, Todd, you're not that person anymore. Mm-hmm. And I was like, you're right. I'm not. And I don't know why I don't believe that about myself. And I don't see the change that have happened, but you're right. I'm not that person anymore. And she's like, there's no reason why you couldn't be a great husband and a great father and really dive into these relationships. And I was like, you're right. There isn't a reason why I couldn't. That self-stigma held me back for a really long time.
Yeah, and I think community plays a huge role. There's always a lot of ways that I work to intentionally put myself in spaces where people see me for what it is that I want for me and my future. So like sometimes I got to borrow the perception of others. So like how you talk to your friend had to like remind you of who it is that you are now versus who it is that you were. And Kanye West. Kanye West has this quote, and whatever you think about the person, but he has this quote that I heard recently where it's like, if you hang around enough people who don't know who you are, you'll forget who you are. And I think the opposite works as well. Like if you hang around enough people who know who you are, like you'll continue to remember who you are. And that's why like coaching is important. That's why community is important. That's why connectivity is important. And what I've learned is that takes intention. Like we have to choose to do it like today. Like I have to choose to pick up the phone today. I have to choose to put myself in the communities that will guide me and prop me up for what it is that I desire for my present and for my future today. And so is the Phoenix like your only community that you're tapped in with today? What does life look like today? And if not, then what are some other communities that you're a part of, and how did you get there?
Yeah, so the Phoenix is probably my largest community. I've got some really, really deep, beautiful relationships that have developed over the years with a bunch of fellows. We run together. We have a group text message going on, and I'm not much of a runner, but I run with them. There's 13 of us in the group, and we constantly are talking. It's not we run with the Phoenix, we run without the Phoenix together. We've traveled all over the country together. We rock climb a lot, and that's my other community is the outdoor community. And I spend a lot of time with the outdoor community in Colorado Springs. I'm very passionate about rock climbing, hiking, mountaineering, and all those things. So I built some community outside as well. But yeah, that's, anywhere where I can connect with nature, with other folks, is really what seems to work really well for me. And one of the beautiful things about most of those activities is they really center you because they demand absolute focus on what you're doing. When you're rock climbing, there you can't think about what's going on next week, this problem or that problem. You're really just focused on what's directly in front of you, and really trusting the person that's with you on your belay, that they've got you if things go wrong. So I think those two aspects have really developed some really, really deep relationships for me. And then sharing something that you enjoy, right? So I think and that's where I've really built a lot of community around. And I think for, in the recovery piece of that, that's all due to my recovery. Again, that's the starting point, right? So if I don't have that recovery, I don't have these things. And now it's, I think it went from early on in my recovery, I have to now I get to. I get to be a part of this community. I get to, do these things. And so that's a pretty exciting deal,
Yeah. I hope to more in the future, but haven't had a lot of opportunities to work directly with you or be at Phoenix events with you. But we were at one just a gathering together, and Bryce and I were actually speaking. And I think it was when we did our live podcast, Bryce, when we did and Todd, you were kind of running all the outdoor events. So everyone that was at this thing could get a taste of what the Phoenix was like. And I just remember the other folks, because I'd gone to like the yoga class that someone led, and they were talking about like, Todd is having us hike the trail again, because you were just like, it was going to be such a great experience for these people that you were going to make sure that you knew every single rock on that trail, so that they were going to be safe, so that you knew that no matter what level someone was at, they were going to be supported. You knew who was going to be, at what part of the trail to support folks, and make sure everybody had someone that was, with them. So it really was like a community event. And, like I said, I haven't gotten to know you all that well, but I was just like, that is all I need to know. Like, that is the kind of person that I want to be in a community with, who's just not only excited to share recovery and share the outdoors and all those things, but do it in a way that is so intentional and so supportive of the people that are coming alongside. That is like, that's the guy you are now. That's incredible. I'm so lucky.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I think we can, people can have an amazing experience with outdoors, or they can have an experience that can really turn them off. And having a little bit of experience outdoors. I know other people did that for me. When I came to the Phoenix, I was not an outdoors person. I played football and wrestled, in high school and stuff like that. And that was kind of my athletic background, a little bit of powerlifting. So the outdoors weren't really on my radar, even though I grew up in Colorado. And so I think but I had some good experiences without the outdoors. And then the instructors that I had at the Phoenix were so amazing that it was really infectious, and their energy level was infectious. And so I take it as like a pretty big responsibility that, people have an amazing experience, and that it's safe, and that they feel safe, but yet we're kind of pushing beyond our comfort zone. And so striking that balance is super important, because that's where we grow, right?
Yeah.
We don't grow a lot when we're super cozy at home, and we don't grow if we're redlining and terrified. We grow when we're in that little sweet spot there where we're challenged a little bit. And so just trying to create a safe environment for that. And it's because that's what I got to enjoy, so.
Yeah. When did that shift happen, that you went from just attending to starting to be a leader in the community?
Sure. So again, that self-stigmatization was full in effect. I was showing up at climbing 30 minutes early, getting everybody's gear out and sorting it and everything. And one of the instructors walked up to me, one of the Phoenix staff walked up to me and said, "Hey, do you want to be a volunteer?" And I was like, "Who, me?" And I'm like, I don't know if I could do that. And they're like, "You're already doing that." And so I was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, I could probably do that." Sure. And so, so I started teaching introduction clinics to climbing, and like just having that opportunity to see the lights come on for other folks, and then, we'd always go out to eat afterwards with everybody. Anybody who wanted to come, they could come eat after, climbing. We'd always invite everybody, and just sitting down and talking to, and just hearing their experiences, and seeing like, that it was a life-changing experience for them as well. Was when I started to just I was like, wow, I really just want to do this more and more. I want to share this more and more. And then I'd go back to drug court and I'd tell everybody, hey, you guys got to check this out. I want this Phoenix thing. It's amazing. You should be a part of, and dragging all of them there. And so that's when I started to get involved as a volunteer. And then about a year after being a volunteer, I came to work for the Phoenix full time. Since then, I've had quite a few different roles, but my primary role has been initiating new locations throughout the country. And so that's been a really, really exciting thing. I've settled into to a sub-region now that I oversee that's established, but I got to be a part of starting all those locations in that sub-region. So that's really fun too.
That's so cool.
Nice. So before we get up out of here, Todd, I think I'm curious about one thing, and then I got a question for you. But the one thing I'm curious about is fatherhood, and you've mentioned before, like I tried being a dad, I wasn't good at it, and how you were questioning if you were ready to step into being a father and like show up intentionally. But how has and so for those of you who have listened to the podcast, 'cause I don't know if we like explicitly said it like you mentioned it, but episode 49 was with Kaylee Jones. And that was with Todd Joneses, if you can't put it together because they both are the Joneses that I'm
the
trying
only
to keep
Joneses
up with.
too, I'm sure.
But a lot of Kaylee's episode was surrounded by her desire to be a mother and how important motherhood was to her. And I'm curious what your experience has been in fatherhood, showing up for that. And I know you got you all have a newish baby.
Yeah, he's 2.5.
2.5. Right? That's new to me. My son will be 18 this year, so that's
Yeah. So I've got a son who's almost 18. He'll be 18 in October. And my addiction, put it a nice way, took me away from him when he was about 4. I just was unable to show up for him. And I lost, custody completely. And when I first got sober, I was like, yeah, I want to be a part of his life again. And his mom was like, that's nice, but, we've heard this before. And so, time kind of went on for a while. And then that's where I got the idea that I just probably wasn't cut out to be a dad. When I realized I wasn't that person anymore, and I was like, I think I can do this differently, and I want to be really intentional about it. I also had to be really open to the fact that I didn't know how to do that, right? I didn't know how to be a good dad. I didn't know how to show up in that way. I didn't know what to do. And so I went after a bunch of resources. Again, I just, I got a bunch of books. I started talking to people who I respected their parenting and respected the kind of father they were. And I was like, I'm going to show up really intentionally in this child's lives. So Bo Summit came into the world. He's an amazing little guy. It has been probably one of the greatest challenges, but also definitely the greatest delight of my life. I never knew that I could just, hang out doing nothing for so long and be so full of joy as I am with that little guy. But this was all news to me. So I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, Bryce, but it's been amazing to just be a part of that journey. And it's just taken a lot of resources to really intentionally parent him. And Kaylee is an amazing partner in it. This is something that she's always wanted her whole life. And this is something that I kind of stumbled into my first go around. And with her, it's been something that she's just a joy to partner with us on. She's very passionate about it, and she had thought about a lot of things I hadn't thought about. So she had all the questions to pose and those kind of things. And I think that doing it together is also what an amazing gift, right? We both are very intentional about it. We talk about it. We how we're going to do things with Bo, and the jury's still out. He's 2.5, but I think we're doing a pretty good job.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't met the baby, but but I've met Ty and Kaylee, and just from the outside looking in, judging by you all's character, I wouldn't be mad if I ended up with being you guys' baby. That's for sure.
It's Bryce's bid for adoption right there.
Adopt me, please.
I'm always really excited about the idea that he's never going to have to see his mom drink abuse. He's never going to know that, And because of the lifestyle that we live, and so actively outdoors. He was just rock climbing with us last weekend. He's got his little chest harness, and he's fired up. And he's been raised in the outdoors. He has a love of trees and bugs. He rescued a worm today. He came home from his walk to tell me all about it. And just in the community that he has around him, that running group of guys that I have are all sober. He calls them Uncle Jeff, Uncle Scott, Uncle Steve. They're all his uncles. It's just a beautiful thing. We were hanging out with him this weekend, and his Uncle Eric, he likes to give the sneak a hug too. He'll just walk by and hug his leg and then take off, and but he just has all these people around him and these wonderful examples of human beings for him to emulate and to be affected by in his life. And that's the really exciting thing to me is it's not just, it's Kaylee and I, they're putting all the effort in we have, but we've just got this wonderful community around us that can give them all the things that we can't. So
that's wonderful. That's wonderful. So final question. If you could go back in time and take any iteration of Todd and tell that iteration something, what iteration of Todd would you choose and what would you tell him?
Wow. Wow, that's a good one. So I'd probably go back to the first time. I remember during my when I was drinking and using, I remember saying, thinking to myself, I said to myself, "Self, you don't know how to not do this, and this is and not drinking and using is probably hopeless." So I don't regret my addiction because that's the journey that it took to get me to where I am now. But I think if I had been able to see myself then and say, yes, there is hope. Yes, it can look different. Yes, it doesn't need to be this way. And here's a place where you can see it. I think that would have been amazing to just have that filter, because right now when I look at the world, I've got enough positive experiences in my life that I can look at it with the filter of hope, that things can look different. Things are possible. Things are good. But the darkest points of my addiction, I didn't have that filter. I had a different filter. I had the filter of despair and regret and all those kind of things. So I would have loved an opportunity to grab myself up at that point and say, or even be able to look into the future and say, this is what your life is going to become, buddy. Check that out. I know I wouldn't have believed it at the time, right? But I mean, if I had been able to, I think that's what I would have done.
I love that. And it's such a difference. Then you said, self, you don't know how to do this, and that was a reason not to. And I feel like the message that we're just hoping to send, I think, with this podcast and in so much of the things that we all do personally and, within the realms of this community is to show people that it's like all of ourselves, like none of us know how to do it. That's why we're together, like it's okay to not know how to do it. That's a reason to do it together, and it's not a personal failing. That is just a reason to reach out.
Also, can we normalize talking to ourselves by starting with self?
That was delightful. I like that a lot.
Yeah, well, looks like we did it, Liz.
We did it. Todd, first of all, thank you for coming on. And you are a beautiful speaker and have really wonderful things to say. When we started out, Todd was talking about what a wonderful speaker his wife is, which she absolutely is. And you did not disappoint, which we never would have thought you would, because your story is beautiful. It's going to inspire a lot of people. And is there anything anywhere that you would send folks who are just getting started on this journey, either resources that you have personally or even just, Phoenix stuff that you'd want to let people know about?
I mean, obviously the Phoenix is an amazing place to start. And then one of the things that I did was I really dug into the community and I just said, hey, what are you doing for your recovery? And some of the folks were like, I go to this 12-step meeting. I was like, great, I'm going to go there so I know somebody. And then other people are like, I use this therapist. And I'm like, that's great. I'll go talk to them or, get a referral or, just kind of really dig into other people that are doing it. Find somebody who their whatever aspect of their life reflects kind of something you think is amazing and and ask them some questions. I think those are some great resources to start with right there.
Perfect. I love it. And, I think we can say for our own experiences that we always love to answer those questions. What a gift it is to have been on a journey like this, and then to have people look at you and say, hey, what are you doing? Because I want what you have. It's a super cool thing. Well, thank you everybody for listening. So grateful that you're here with us again. Gosh, we've had, closer to 100 than 0 episodes now. So we're really doing this thing, and we couldn't do it without you. So please be sure you subscribe so that you don't miss a single episode. If you would be so kind to rate and review. I know I say it every time, so it's easy to just but if you do have a moment to do it, one little click makes such a difference. And reach out to us too. Bryce is going to tell us in a fun way how you can do that.
In a fun way, just because you said that, all you got to do is go to the App Store and get the
I knew it.
app,
the moment it came out of my mouth.
See, I was going to do something cool, but if she said it, I'm going to say it in a fun way. I'm going to be super boring with it. Go to the Google Play Store, go to the App Store, download the Phoenix app. Once you download that app, there are community groups in that app. One of those community groups is the Rise, Recover, Live community group. Come in here, talk to us. Tell us what you liked about this episode. Come say what's up to Todd. Tell us what you like about the show, what you don't like as much, what you like to see more of. What's your favorite flavor of LaCroix? How do you pronounce LaCroix? Is it LaCroix or LaCroix or LaCroix? And then we'll be there to reply, respond, and create community. So once again, download that app, then go in that community group, the Rise, Recover, Live community group, and come holler at us.
Heck yeah. While you're in there, share your recovery resource, because everybody always, even if you've been doing it a long time, I feel like it's always helpful to hear what others are doing. So thank you again, and we will see you next time.
Catch you later.
Thank you.
So now you're excited. Bryce, Liz, how do I get involved with the Phoenix? Well, my friend, it is super simple. We actually have an app. Head over to the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store, or look in the show notes of this podcast, wherever you're listening to or watching this podcast, and go download the Phoenix app.
The Phoenix app makes it so easy to find classes that are near you, or to access our virtual class schedule where you can hop on from the comfort of your home. You can also join our groups and have a conversation with someone from the Phoenix community from anywhere in the world. Please make sure that you join the podcast group where you can connect with Bryce and I and other listeners. Everything that you need is in the show notes. You can also head to our website at www.thephoenix.org. And maybe while you're there, you click the volunteer tab and get even more involved.